The stars were cold and quiet at the edge of known space. Sentinel Station Omega-7 floated in the darkness like a small metal island, far from Earth and far from help. It was not a place for soldiers or heroes. It was a place for listeners. Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the main console and watched the data streams flow across her screen. She had served on this station for 3 years. Her job was simple but important. She listened to the galaxy and reported what she heard. The Ascended Hegemony controlled most of the galaxy. They were a coalition of ancient species who had ruled for 10,000 years. Their capital was a world called Valthrix, the Throneworld. No human had ever seen it. No human had ever been invited. To the hegemony, humans were young and unimportant. They were allowed to exist in their small corner of space as long as they caused no trouble. Elena had always accepted this reality. Humanity had only 200 star systems. The hegemony had millions. Fighting them would be suicide. So humans traded quietly, expanded slowly, and tried not to attract attention. But tonight, something was different. Lieutenant Kieran Okonkwo looked up from her station. She was young, only 26 years old, with dark skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She was the best signals analyst on the station. "Commander," she said, "I'm picking up encrypted hegemony traffic. Military channels. A lot of it." Elena walked over to her station. "Can you decode it?" "I'm trying. It's using a cipher we've never seen before. But I'm getting fragments." The room fell silent. Everyone stopped their work and watched. Military traffic was rare. Encrypted military traffic was almost unheard of. The hegemony had no enemies. They had no one to fight. Kieran worked for hours. Her fingers moved across the console as she applied every decryption tool humanity had developed. Slowly, piece by piece, the message became clear. Elena read the words on the screen. Her face went pale. "Cleansing protocols," she whispered. "They're talking about cleansing protocols for human space." Kieran felt her heart stop. She knew what those words meant. The hegemony did not fight wars. They did not negotiate with species they considered threats. They simply erased them. Entire civilizations had vanished throughout galactic history, and no one knew why. Now she understood. "They're going to exterminate us," Elena said. "All of us. Every human colony, every station, every ship." "Why?" Kieran asked. "We've done nothing to them." Elena shook her head. "The message says we're disruptive to galactic stability. It says our growth rate is concerning. Our technology advancement is too fast." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They're afraid of what we might become." "We have to warn Earth," Kieran said. "We have to tell everyone." Elena nodded. "Begin transmission immediately. Send everything we have. All the decoded data, all the raw files. Send it all." Kieran started the transmission sequence. The station's antenna turned toward the distant light of Sol. The message began to travel across the void at the speed of light, carrying the most important warning in human history. But the universe was not kind. The sensor officer shouted first. "Contact." Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace, hegemony signatures. "It's a strike fleet." Elena's blood went cold. "How did they find us?" "They must have detected our decryption attempts," Kieran said. "They know we're listening." On the screen, 20 hegemony warships appeared. They were beautiful and terrible, their hulls covered in gold and silver patterns that had not changed in millennia. They did not hail the station. They did not demand surrender. They simply opened fire. The station shook as the first weapons hit. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered and died. Elena grabbed her console to stay on her feet. "The transmission," she shouted. "Did it go through?" Kieran checked her screen. Tears filled her eyes. "Only 40%. They jammed us before we could finish." Another explosion rocked the station. The hull began to break apart. Elena looked at her crew. She had served with these people for years. They were her family. "Everyone to the escape pods," she ordered. Now, but she knew it was hopeless. The hegemony fleet surrounded them. Escape pods would be easy targets. Then she looked at Kieran. The young lieutenant was still at her station, downloading files to a portable drive. "What are you doing?" Elena demanded. "The decryption keys," Kieran said. "If I can save them, maybe someone else can decode the full message. Maybe Earth can learn the truth." Elena understood. She grabbed Kieran's arm and pulled her toward the emergency hangar. "There's a stealth shuttle, experimental. It might be small enough to slip through their formation." "What about the others?" Kieran asked. Elena's eyes were hard. Someone has to survive. Someone has to carry the warning. That's you, Lieutenant. That's your mission now. They reached the hangar as the station collapsed around them. Elena pushed Kieran into the shuttle and sealed the door. Go, Elena shouted through the glass. Don't stop until you reach Earth. Tell them what happened here. Tell them what's coming. Kieran wanted to argue. She wanted to save her commander, her friends, everyone. But she knew Elena was right. The mission was more important than any single life, even her own. She activated the shuttle's engines. The small ship slipped out of the dying station, just as the final explosions tore it apart. Behind her, Sentinel Station Omega-7 became a cloud of fire and debris. Kieran watched on her sensors as the escape pods launched. She watched as the hegemony ships destroyed them one by one. No survivors. No witnesses. Except for her. She turned the shuttle toward Earth and activated the stealth systems. The ship became invisible, just a shadow moving through the darkness. The hegemony fleet searched for hours but found nothing. Kieran was alone. The journey to Earth would take 3 months. Her shuttle was damaged and slow. She had limited food and water. She would have to ration everything carefully, but she would survive. She had to survive. The fate of humanity depended on a single woman in a broken ship, carrying secrets that the hegemony wanted buried forever. As she flew through the endless night, Kieran thought about Commander Vasquez and the others. She thought about their sacrifice. They had died so she could live. They had died so humanity could have a chance. She looked at the data drive in her hand. Such a small thing, just a piece of metal and circuitry. But it contained the truth. It contained evidence that the most powerful civilization in the galaxy planned to murder billions of innocent people. Kieran made a promise to the stars and to the ghosts of her friends. She would reach Earth. She would deliver the warning. And somehow, some way, humanity would fight back. The hegemony thought they were gods. They thought they could destroy entire species without consequence. They thought humanity was too small and weak to matter. They were wrong. Back at the site of the destroyed station, the hegemony commander reported to his superiors on Valethrix. The listening post was eliminated. All personnel were dead. The cleansing protocols could proceed on schedule. He did not mention the small shadow that had slipped through his fleet. He did not know it existed. And that small oversight, that tiny mistake, would eventually cost the hegemony everything. In the darkness of space, Kieran flew on. She carried with her the first spark of humanity's rebellion. And sparks, as the hegemony would learn, have a way of becoming fires. 3 months had passed since the destruction of Sentinel Station. Kieran Okonkwo stood on Earth for the first time in her life and found a world gripped by fear. The hegemony had attacked 12 human colonies. They called it border pacification. They said humans had violated galactic law. They said the attacks were necessary for peace. But everyone knew the truth now. The fragments of data that Kieran had transmitted before the jamming had reached military intelligence. Humanity knew they were marked for death. The Terran coalition government was in chaos. Some leaders wanted to surrender. They believed that if humanity apologized and accepted punishment, the hegemony might show mercy. Others wanted to fight. They spoke of building more warships and defending every colony. Kieran knew both plans were foolish. Surrender would only delay the inevitable. The hegemony did not want obedience. They wanted extinction, and fighting was impossible. The hegemony had millions of warships. Humanity had perhaps 10,000. She sat in a small office in Geneva, waiting. She had been summoned by someone named Director Marcus Chen of an organization she had never heard of, the Terran Intelligence Division. The door opened, and an old man walked in. He had gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything. He moved slowly, like someone who had all the time in the world. "Lieutenant Okonkwo," he said. "Thank you for coming. I didn't have a choice," Kieran replied. "Your people practically kidnapped me." Chen smiled. "We needed to speak privately. The walls have ears, as they say, especially now." He sat across from her and placed a small device on the table. A soft hum filled the room. "Now we can talk freely," he said. "That device blocks all surveillance. Even hegemony technology cannot penetrate it." Kieran leaned forward. "Who are you?" "What is the Terran Intelligence Division?" "We are humanity's secret," Chen said. "We have existed for 200 years, since the day we first made contact with alien life. Our founders understood something important. In a galaxy of ancient empires, Humanity would need more than ships and weapons. We would need knowledge. I don't understand. Chen stood and walked to a window. The city of Geneva spread out below, beautiful and fragile. The hegemony has ruled for 10,000 years, he said. They believe they are invincible. They believe they know everything. But they have a weakness. They stopped watching. They stopped learning. Why would they? They have no enemies. No threats. So they became lazy. He turned back to Kieran. We did not become lazy. For 2 centuries, we have been watching, listening, learning. We have placed agents on hundreds of worlds. We have hacked their communication networks. We have built observation systems they cannot detect. We know the hegemony better than they know themselves. Kieran felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. You have intelligence on them? We have everything, Chen said. We know their military positions. We know their political divisions. We know their history, including the parts they have hidden from the galaxy. And most importantly, we know their secrets. He placed a datapad on the table. Kieran picked it up and began to read. Her eyes grew wide. They've done this before, she whispered. The hegemony has exterminated other species. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Correct. Any species that showed potential to challenge their dominance was quietly eliminated. The galaxy never knew because the hegemony controls all information. They write the history. They decide what is remembered and what is forgotten. Kieran set down the datapad. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to help us stop them. How? We can't fight their fleet. Chen smiled again. It was a dangerous smile. We won't fight their war. We'll fight ours. The hegemony expects humans to do what every other species has done. Surrender or resist with force. They are prepared for both options, but they are not prepared for what we have planned. He activated a holographic display. A beautiful blue and gold planet appeared, surrounded by defensive stations and patrol fleets. This is Valthrix, Chen said. The Throneworld, the heart of the hegemony. No enemy has ever threatened it. No foreign ship has ever approached without permission. It is the most protected place in the galaxy. You want to attack it? I want to break it. Not with weapons, with truth. Chen pointed at the planet. The hegemony's power comes from fear and ignorance. The other species obey because they believe the hegemony is eternal and unstoppable. But what if they learn the truth? What if they discovered that their rulers have been committing genocide for millennia? What if they saw proof? Kieran began to understand. You want to expose them. I want to broadcast their crimes to every inhabited world in the galaxy simultaneously. I want to show billions of beings that their masters are not gods. They are murderers, and murderers can be stopped. How? How do we get that information to the Throneworld? How do we broadcast it? That is where you come in. Chen handed her another datapad. I am assembling a team. The best people we have. Your job will be to complete the decryption of the hegemony files. We need every piece of evidence we can find. Kieran looked at the team roster. A xenopsychologist named Dr. Sarah Webb, an expert on alien minds. A hacker called Jin, who had once broken into hegemony banking systems. A woman named Thessa, who had been born a slave on a hegemony world and knew their culture from the inside. And a combat specialist named Cole, who had fought in a dozen secret operations. This is a small team for such a big mission, Kieran said. Small is good. Small is invisible. The hegemony watches for fleets and armies. They do not watch for shadows. Chen walked to the door. We call this operation the Ghost Protocol. We will become ghosts in their system. We will travel to the Throneworld itself. We will gather the evidence we need. And when the time is right, we will show the galaxy what the hegemony truly is. He paused at the door. Lieutenant, I won't lie to you. This mission is likely suicide. The chances of success are small. The chances of survival are smaller. But if we do nothing, humanity dies anyway. Every man, woman, and child. Every colony. Every dream we ever had. Kieran thought about Commander Vasquez. She thought about the crew of Sentinel Station. They had died so she could carry a warning. Now she had a chance to do something more than warn. She had a chance to fight. I'm in, she said. Chen nodded. I knew you would be. Report to the training facility tomorrow. You have 6 months to prepare. Then we leave for the heart of the enemy. He left, and Kieran sat alone in the room. Outside, the sun was setting over Geneva. Somewhere out there, the hegemony was preparing to destroy her species. They had ships and weapons and 10,000 years of power. But humanity had something they did not expect. Humanity had been watching. Humanity had been learning. And now humanity was ready to use that knowledge in ways the hegemony had never imagined. Kieran looked at the data pad in her hand. A team of 5 people. A mission to the most dangerous place in the galaxy. A plan to topple an empire with information instead of weapons. It was madness. But it was also hope. And hope, Kieran realized, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The Ghost Protocol had begun. The ship was small and ugly. It had no weapons, no shields, and no markings that would identify it as human. To any observer, it was just another trading vessel moving through hegemony space. One of millions. Inside, Kieran Okonkwo and her team began their journey to the Throneworld. They had left human space 3 months ago. Each day brought them deeper into enemy territory. Each day increased the danger. But so far, no one had stopped them. No one had questioned them. The hegemony saw what they expected to see. A small ship, unimportant cargo. Nothing worth noticing. That was the genius of the plan. Kieran sat with Jin, the hacker, reviewing the decrypted files from Sentinel Station. Jin was thin and nervous, with quick hands and quicker eyes. He had grown up in the slums of New Shanghai and had taught himself to break into any system ever created. "Look at this," Jin said, pointing at his screen. "The hegemony isn't one empire. It's more like a coalition. Dozens of species working together. Working together, how? That's the thing. They're not really working together. The ruling species, the Val-3, they control everything. The other species follow, because they're afraid, because they think they have no choice." Kieran studied the data. So the hegemony is held together by fear, not loyalty. Exactly. If that fear disappeared, the whole thing could fall apart. In another part of the ship, Thessa was teaching the team about hegemony culture. She was tall and slender, with blue-gray skin and eyes that held centuries of suffering. Her species, the Keth, had been conquered by the hegemony 500 years ago. She had been born a slave and had remained one until TID agents smuggled her to human space. The Val-3 believe they are chosen by the universe to rule, Thessa explained. They see other species as children who need guidance. When a child becomes troublesome, they eliminate it. In their minds, this is not evil, it is necessary. Dr. Sarah Webb, the xenopsychologist, nodded. Classic supremacist thinking. They've convinced themselves that their crimes are actually kindness. Can they be reasoned with? Cole asked. He was the combat specialist, a large man with scars on his hands and a quiet voice. Thessa shook her head. No, they have believed this for 10,000 years. You cannot change beliefs that old, but you can break the system that supports them. The ship continued through hegemony space. They stopped at trading posts and refueling stations. They played their roles perfectly. Kieran was a merchant. Jin was her assistant. Thessa pretended to be a servant, which was easy because that was what the hegemony expected her species to be. Cole and Dr. Webb stayed hidden when possible. At each stop, they gathered intelligence. They listened to conversations. They hacked into local networks. And slowly, they built a picture of the hegemony that no outsider had ever seen. The truth was worse than they had imagined. "I found the records," Jin said one night, his face pale. "Complete records of every species the hegemony has eliminated. There are 47 of them. 47 entire civilizations, gone. Billions of lives." Kieran read the files. Each entry was clinical and cold. Species name, homeworld location, reason for elimination, method used, date completed. It was genocide reduced to paperwork. "Some of these species had billions of people," she said. "The hegemony killed them all? Not always directly. Sometimes they destroyed their food supplies. Sometimes they spread diseases. Sometimes they just bombed the planets until nothing could survive." Jin closed his eyes. "And they've been doing this for thousands of years. Nobody knows because nobody is left to tell." That night, Kieran could not sleep. She walked to the observation deck and stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, the hegemony was continuing its work. Human colonies were burning. Her people were dying. Thessa joined her. "You are troubled. How do you live with it?" Kieran asked. "Knowing what they've done. Knowing what they are. I survived by believing that someday, someone would stop them. Thessa's eyes reflected the starlight. When your agents found me, I thought it was a dream. Humans were supposed to be weak, unimportant, but you were planning something the hegemony never expected. You were planning to fight with truth instead of weapons. Do you think it will work? I think it is our only chance. The hegemony cannot be defeated in battle, but they can be defeated by their own lies. Show the galaxy what they really are, and their empire will collapse. The ship reached a major hegemony world called Thesson Prime. This was where they would find what they needed. Deep in the government archives was a complete record of every crime the hegemony had ever committed. Proof that could not be denied. The mission was simple. Jin would hack the archive systems. Cole would provide security. Kieran and Thessa would enter the building disguised as maintenance workers. Dr. Webb would monitor communications and warn them of any danger. Nothing was simple. They entered the archive at night. The building was massive, filled with data storage units that contained the history of 1,000 worlds. Guards patrolled every level. Security systems watched every corner. Jin worked his magic. Doors opened. Cameras looked the other way. Alarms stayed silent. They moved through the building like ghosts, invisible and unheard. The central archive was a room filled with light. Holographic displays showed data streams from across the galaxy, and in the center was what they had come for. The primary server containing the complete history of hegemony actions. Kieran connected her device to the server and began downloading. The files were enormous. The crimes were endless. She saw worlds burning. She saw species begging for mercy. She saw children dying by the millions. We have company. Dr. Webb's voice came through the communicator. A security patrol is heading your way. You have 3 minutes. Jin worked faster. The download continued. 60%, 70, 80. Cole saw the guards first. We're out of time. Almost there, Jin said. 90%, 95. The guards entered the room. Cole moved. He was faster than any of them expected. 2 guards fell before they could raise their weapons. But more were coming. Many more. Done. Jin pulled the data drive from the server. They ran. Alarms screamed. Lights flashed. Cole fought a path through the guards, using his bare hands against their weapons. He was magnificent. He was impossible. But there were too many. Go, Cole shouted. Get to the ship. I'll hold them here. We're not leaving you, Kieran said. Cole looked at her with steady eyes. The mission is more important than any one person. That's what you told me when we started. Now go. He turned and charged at the oncoming guards. Kieran wanted to help him. She wanted to fight beside him, but she knew he was right. She grabbed Jin and Thessa and ran. They reached the ship as explosions echoed behind them. The engines roared to life. The ship lifted off and disappeared into the darkness of space. Cole was gone. Kieran sat in the cargo hold, holding the data drive. It contained evidence of unspeakable crimes. It contained the truth that would shake the galaxy. And it had cost them a friend. He knew, Thessa said softly. He knew from the beginning that some of us would not return. He accepted it because he believed in the mission. Kieran closed her eyes. They had what they needed. They had the weapons to fight back. But the journey to the Throneworld was not over. And the hardest part was still ahead. The ship flew on through the darkness. Ahead of them waited Valthrix, the heart of the enemy, the place where empires would rise or fall. They were coming, and they were bringing the truth with them. Valthrix was beautiful beyond words. The throne world hung in space like a jewel, blue and gold and white. Orbital stations surrounded it like a crown. Ships of 100 species came and went, bringing tribute and trade to the heart of the hegemony. From a distance, it looked like paradise. Kieran knew better. Their ship had entered the system 3 days ago, disguised as a merchant vessel from a minor trading world. They had passed through 17 security checkpoints. They had been scanned, questioned, and inspected. And they had survived every test. Now they orbited the most protected planet in the galaxy, waiting for the moment to strike. The timing was perfect. Today was the convocation of species, the greatest ceremony in the hegemony calendar. Representatives from every member world gathered in the Grand Palace to reaffirm their loyalty to the ruling conclave. Billions of beings across the galaxy would be watching the broadcast, and so would the team. The quantum communication network is ready, Jin reported. When we transmit, The signal will reach every inhabited world simultaneously. They won't be able to block it. They won't even know it's happening until it's too late. Dr. Webb reviewed the psychological profile she had built of the Conclave leaders. The High Arbiter is the key. He has ruled for 300 years. He has never been questioned. He has never faced opposition. He believes he is untouchable. Good, Kieran said. Let him believe that for a few more hours. They descended to the planet's surface using forged credentials. The streets of the capital city were filled with aliens of every shape and size. All of them moved toward the Grand Palace, where the ceremony would take place. Kieran had never seen so many species in one place. Tall beings with 4 arms, small creatures that floated on anti-gravity fields, entities made of crystal and light. The diversity was stunning, and all of them were trapped. All of them were slaves to a system built on lies. Today, that would change. Thessa led them through the crowd. She knew the routes. She knew the patterns. Her people had served the Vial 3 for centuries. They knew every corner of this city. They were not alone. Throughout the capital, members of an underground network moved into position. Species who had waited generations for this moment. Species who remembered what the hegemony had done to their neighbors, their friends, their families. They did not know the full plan. They only knew that today was the day. Today, someone would finally fight back. The Grand Palace was a mountain of crystal and gold. It rose into the sky like a challenge to the gods. Inside, 10,000 representatives waited for the ceremony to begin. At the center of the Great Hall, on a throne that floated above the crowd, sat the High Arbiter. He was ancient. His skin was pale gold. His eyes had seen centuries pass. He looked down at the assembled species with the calm confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Brothers and sisters of the hegemony, he began, his voice echoing through the hall. We gather today as we have gathered for 10,000 years, to celebrate our unity, to honor our peace, to reaffirm our commitment to the eternal order. The crowd responded with ritual words. They had spoken these words before. Their parents had spoken them. Their grandparents had spoken them. It was tradition. It was expected. It was meaningless. In the shadows of the hall, Kieran watched. Jin was at a hidden terminal, ready to trigger the broadcast. Dr. Webb monitored the crowd's reactions. Thessa stood beside Kieran, her hands trembling with anticipation. Now, Kieran whispered. Jin activated the transmission. Across the galaxy, screens flickered. Broadcasts were interrupted. Something new appeared. Something the hegemony had never wanted anyone to see. It began with images, worlds burning, cities destroyed, bodies piled in mass graves, species that no longer existed because the hegemony had decided they were inconvenient. Then came the documents. Official records, stamped with the seal of the Conclave, orders for extermination, reports of successful genocide, congratulations for efficient elimination of potential threats. Then came the list. 47 species. Gone. Erased. Forgotten. Until now. In the Grand Palace, the crowd began to murmur. Some watched in confusion. Others watched in growing horror. The High Arbiter saw the screens that lined the walls, showing the evidence of his crimes to his most loyal subjects. For the first time in 300 years, he felt fear. What is this? He demanded. Stop this transmission. Guards. But the guards were watching too. And many of them belonged to species that had lost neighbors to the hegemony's cleansing protocols. Kieran stepped out of the shadows. She walked toward the floating throne, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Every eye turned to her. My name is Kieran Okonkwo, she said. I am human. My species is currently being exterminated by your order, but I am not here for revenge. The High Arbiter stared at her. How dare you enter this sacred place? How dare you show these lies? They are not lies. You know it. Everyone in this room knows it now. Every being in the galaxy knows it. Kieran pointed at the screens. This is your legacy. This is what you have built your empire on. Graves. Silence. Fear. The crowd was no longer murmuring. They were shouting. Some defended the Conclave. But many more demanded answers. The unity that had lasted 10,000 years cracked like glass under pressure. Guards! The High Arbiter screamed. Seize her! Kill her! The guards moved. But so did others. The underground network revealed itself. Beings who had hidden their rage for generations, stood up and blocked the guards. Fighting broke out, not just in the palace, but across the capital, across the planet, across the galaxy. The Throneworld was shaking, not from weapons, not from bombs, from the truth. Kieran stood her ground as chaos erupted around her. She looked up at the High Arbiter and saw something wonderful. She saw an ancient tyrant realize that his power was an illusion. She saw a god understand that he was mortal. "You cannot stop this," she told him. "Every world has seen the evidence. Every species knows what you have done. You can kill me. You can kill 1,000,000 humans. It will not matter. The truth is free, and it will never be captured again." The High Arbiter raised his hand. Energy gathered around his fingers. He had killed before. He would kill again. But before he could strike, Thessa stepped forward. Behind her stood dozens of Keth. Her people. Slaves for 500 years. Slaves no more. "You are finished," Thessa said. "The hegemony is finished. Today we begin again." The High Arbiter looked at the crowd. He saw species he had ruled for millennia staring at him with new eyes. He saw fear, yes, but not fear of him. Fear of what he represented, fear of what they had allowed to happen in their name. And he saw something else. He saw determination. He saw anger. He saw the beginning of the end. Outside the palace, the sky filled with ships. Not hegemony warships, ships from a dozen species, refusing to obey conclave orders, demanding change, demanding justice. The High Arbiter lowered his hand. He sat back on his throne. For the first time in his long life, he had nothing to say. Kieran turned and walked away. Her mission was complete. The truth was free. What happened next was up to the galaxy. Behind her, the throne world continued to shake. The hegemony continued to crack. And across 1,000,000 worlds, beings of every species looked at their screens and asked a simple question: what else have they lied to us about? It was the most dangerous question in the universe. And now, thanks to a handful of humans and their impossible plan, everyone was asking it. The shaking had begun. It would not stop until everything changed. 1 year had passed since the shaking. The galaxy was a different place. The hegemony that had ruled for 10,000 years was broken. The conclave still existed, but their power extended over only a handful of loyal systems. The rest of the galaxy had torn itself free. It had not been peaceful. Some species had risen in violent rebellion. Some had demanded immediate justice. Wars erupted on 100 worlds as old grudges surfaced and new alliances formed. The order that the hegemony had enforced was gone, and chaos rushed in to fill the void. But chaos, Kieran had learned, was not always bad. Sometimes it was the only path to something better. She stood on the observation deck of the TCS New Dawn, a Terran coalition vessel that had once been a simple transport ship. Now it served as a diplomatic vessel, carrying representatives to the gathering that would shape the future of the galaxy. Director Marcus Chen stood beside her. He looked older than he had a year ago. The weight of everything that had happened showed in his eyes. 12 species have declared formal independence from the hegemony, he said. 20 more are negotiating. The conclave cannot stop them. They barely have enough ships to defend their core worlds. And humanity? Kieran asked. The attacks stopped the moment the broadcast began. The hegemony fleet retreated. They had other problems to deal with. Chen smiled, but it was a tired smile. "We survived, Commander. Against all odds. We survived." Kieran was not a lieutenant anymore. The coalition government had promoted her 3 times in the past year. She was now Commander Okonkwo, leader of the reformed Terran Intelligence Division. It was a heavy responsibility, but she had earned it. "Director," she said, "I've been thinking about what comes next. We defeated the hegemony with information, with truth, but that same weapon could be used by anyone, including us." Chen nodded slowly. "You're worried we'll become what we fought against?" "Yes." He was silent for a moment. Below them, the fleet of ships gathered for the Congress grew larger by the hour. Species that had been enemies for centuries were learning to talk. It was slow. It was difficult. But it was happening. "I gave a speech to the Coalition Council last week," Chen said. "I warned them about exactly this. Power is seductive. Victory is intoxicating. It would be easy for humanity to use what we've learned to dominate others, to become the new hegemony." "What did they say?" "Some agreed. Some wanted to take advantage of the chaos to expand our territory. Some wanted revenge for the colonies we lost. Chen turned to face her. That's why I recommended you for this position. Commander, you understand that our greatest victory wasn't destroying the hegemony. It was proving that there's another way to fight. A better way. Kieran thought about the past year. She thought about Cole, who had died so they could escape with the evidence. She thought about Commander Vasquez and the crew of Sentinel Station, who had given their lives to send the first warning. She thought about Tessa and her people, finally free after 5 centuries of slavery. The new TID won't be about gathering power, she said. It will be about preventing anyone from accumulating the kind of power the hegemony had. We'll watch. We'll listen. And if any civilization tries to silence others the way the hegemony did, we'll expose them. Chen smiled. This time, it reached his eyes. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. The Congress took place on a neutral station built specifically for the occasion. Representatives from over 60 species gathered in a great hall that reminded Kieran of the Grand Palace on Valthrix. But this hall was different. Here, everyone had an equal voice. Here, no one sat above the others. The debates lasted for weeks. Old enemies shouted at each other. Ancient grievances were aired. Progress was slow and painful, but progress was made. They called it the Compact of Free Worlds. It was not a government. It was not an empire. It was a simple agreement. Every species would share information freely. No secrets that affected the safety of others would be hidden, and any species that committed genocide or attempted to silence others would face the combined opposition of all members. It was not perfect. Some species refused to join. Some joined and then violated the agreements. Enforcement was difficult when everyone had different ideas about justice, but it was a beginning. Tessa spoke at the final session. She stood before the assembled representatives, the former slave addressing the future of the galaxy. I was born in chains, she said. My mother was born in chains, her mother before her. For 500 years, my people served the hegemony without hope. We believed we were nothing. We believed we deserved our fate. She paused, looking around the hall. Then a small group of humans showed us that everything we believed was a lie. They showed us that the hegemony was not invincible. They showed us that truth is more powerful than any weapon. Tessa's voice grew stronger. The old order is dead. What we build in its place is up to us. We can repeat the mistakes of the past. We can create new hierarchies, new empires, new lies, or we can choose a different path. We can choose transparency. We can choose cooperation. We can choose to remember what happens when one species decides it has the right to judge all others. She looked directly at the human delegation. Humanity taught us that the smallest voice can shake the mightiest throne. Let us never forget that lesson. Let us build a galaxy where every voice matters, where every truth is heard, where no one is ever silenced again. The hall erupted in response. Some cheered. Some argued. Some sat in thoughtful silence. It was messy. It was complicated. It was democracy. Kieran watched from the human section. Jin sat beside her, already planning the information networks that would keep the new compact honest. Dr. Webb was studying the psychological dynamics of the emerging alliance. And somewhere, Kieran knew, 100 species were beginning to believe in possibilities they had never imagined. After the session ended, Kieran walked to the observation deck of the station. The stars spread out before her, endless and beautiful. Somewhere among them was Earth. Somewhere was Valthrix. Somewhere were the graves of 47 species who would never be forgotten again. Tessa joined her. It worked, the Keth woman said. I still cannot believe it worked. It's not over, Kieran replied. It will never be over. Someone will always try to grab power. Someone will always try to silence others. We'll have to fight this battle again and again. But we'll fight it, Tessa said. Together, Kieran nodded. She thought about Commander Vasquez's final words. Someone has to survive. Someone has to carry the warning. She had carried the warning. And now she would carry something else. A promise. A commitment. A vision of what the galaxy could become. Her reflection overlaid the stars. A human face among the infinite lights. One person among billions. Small and fragile and temporary. But sparks were small too. And she had seen what sparks could do. They thought we were too small to matter, Kieran said softly. They forgot that the smallest spark can burn down the oldest throne. Tessa smiled. And now we build something new from the ashes. Behind them, the Congress continued. Ahead of them, the future waited. It would be difficult. It would be dangerous. It would require sacrifices that no one could yet imagine. But for the first time in 10,000 years, it was a future that every species could shape together. A future built not on fear and lies, but on truth and cooperation. A future that a handful of humans had made possible by refusing to accept that they were too weak to fight back. The hegemony had ruled through power. They had maintained order through silence. They had believed that their way was the only way. Humanity had shown them otherwise. And now the galaxy would never be the same. On the observation deck, Kiran Okonkwo watched the stars and smiled. The new dawn had come, and she would do everything in her power to make sure its light reached every corner of the galaxy. This was humanity's gift to the universe. Not weapons, not conquest, but the simple, revolutionary idea that truth could never be destroyed, and it never would be.